So our question is, what is it to be educated in the 21st century? And our third panel's focus is on the significance of equity and inclusion in education. And again, we have a nice cross-section of perspectives. Our first speaker is Malika Bilaj. She's a student, transfer student from PCC, preparing to graduate in March with a BA in Community Development and a minor in Indigenous Nations Studies. Her primary focus in her education studies has been post-colonial community-based research methods. Our second speaker is Rachel Foxhoven, Assistant Director, Global Initiatives in SBA and Conflict Resolution. Oh, no, she's an SBA and Conflict Resolution alumni. Whether she's working with the School of Business staff, faculty, or students, or with people who are incarcerated within the Oregon Department of Corrections, Rachel finds herself most drawn to pondering building institutional awareness around equity-based issues. Our third speaker is Raylene McMillan, a Portland State alum, having served in student government and in countless other capacities while completing her degree here. She is now at Portland Community College as their Government Relations Coordinator. Fourth is Jose Padin, Associate Professor of Sociology in the College of Liberal Arts and Sciences. And our final speaker is Dr. Carmen Suarez, Vice President for Global Diversity and Inclusion. She joined PSU on September 8th and is eager to work with others on continuing to grow a culture of inclusive excellence and make concrete the goals of our PSU strategic plan and application of the equity lens guidance arrived at by a hardworking group of colleagues who demonstrated through action what it means to be truly all about access, inclusion, and equity. All right, our first speaker.
Can you all hear me okay? First, just let me say thank you. It's an honor to get to be here today. In the interest of time, I am going to just read from a piece that I wrote over the course of the past week. My father is from the great North African city of Fez, situated in what is now Morocco. In this city, the first institution of higher education, University Al Qarawin, was created by a Muslim woman, Fatima al-Firi, in the year 859. I was born learning the legacy of my ancestors. The city of Portland is a guest on ceded Grand Ronde tribal land. As a student of urban and regional planning, I have never heard an instructor acknowledge the history of Oregon settler colonialism that underlies the discourse of urban planning. This would not fit neatly into the image of Portland as a progressive, liberal, and sustainable city. You might think, Malika, sister, what does this have to do with equity? Ewa, I would say, like my father. Equity, as we know, is about fairness and justice. I wonder, how might the very format of a segment where an Arab American student, like myself, speaks on the topic of equity for a strictly timed 3 minutes perpetuate the lack of engaged strategies to discuss the very intricate meaning of this complex word? It certainly is a quagmire that students who arrive to this university from diverse backgrounds are confronted with every single day. For example, students from the Grand Ronde tribe whose professors are likely unaware that they are standing and teaching on their students' ceded lands. I was honored to get to be involved in organizing a Students of Color Speak Out event here in December, where the numerous testaments of students clearly identified our lack of physical, spiritual, cultural, and emotional safety on Portland State's campus. I share this with you because it should not have to take an event spanning from 10 o'clock in the morning to nearly 9 o'clock at night for the needs of students of color to be seen, heard, and honored. But it's clear, 3 minutes isn't enough. One tangible act of equity that university campuses can engage in is disarming their police, or perhaps not arming their police in the first place. Armed police officers disproportionately target and harm our Black and brown brothers and sisters. By arming campus police, universities make very clear that equity is not a priority. True reality will always trump hypothetical reality. Denial is a pervasive disease. Institutions of higher education are not designed for marginalized communities to succeed. I sit in class and dream about University Al Qarawin. If we seek to reimagine, redream, and re-envision how institutions of higher education can begin to transform through an equity lens, the images, dreams, and visions of students and faculty of color of all marginalized communities need to be at the heart of this process. This, of course, would mean that the university administration prioritized designing a welcoming, inclusive environment for our communities, where our physical, spiritual, cultural, and emotional safety is not compromised, wherein the need for students of color speak out is not necessary but celebratory, where we can utilize our energy to study for our finals as opposed to teach our administrators that our experiences are valid. I look forward to this day. Let's not let equity become another buzzword in a long line of broken promises.
Malika, I'm incredibly glad to go after you and really appreciate what you just offered and the framework that you just offered, because it actually works great too with what I want to say. So again, my name is Rachel and I work in the School of Business and am just recently working on some diversity and equity issues there. And while I could comment on all these issues that Malika just brought up, what I really want to bring to the conversation today is my lens of not what issues we need to tackle with this, but how we need to tackle them. And so this idea of approach to social change is something that occupies arguably too much of my thought. As a small aside, I often wonder what my life would be like if I replace all of the words equity, approach, and justice in my brain with things like bubbles and dinosaurs. However, that's a thought experiment for another time. But in all seriousness, given that I spend a large portion of my free time volunteering with and within the Oregon Department of Corrections, I find myself constantly wondering about how to change sometimes seemingly unchangeable institutions. So today I want to offer 5 lessons, quick lessons, that I take with me as an ally to this work and to my community whenever I approach this work that we need to remember. 1 is elevate the voices of those most affected, or as I often like to call it, knowing my role within change. Call it allyship, call it elicitive process, call it human-centered design, call it whatever you want, but do it. Even the most well-intentioned of us sometimes fall into the trap of taking on a cause on behalf of individuals rather than with them. Always make sure the group most affected is front and center, and that if you do not belong to them, you need to listen. Listen hard, listen long, and then listen some more. 2, use your influence. This is advice given to me by some wise folks inside the state penitentiary. As an ally to this work and those in my community, when I recognize that I have power and influence, I don't waste time apologizing for it. I simply try to use it. Believe in people, but be critical of institutions and their policies. Although sometimes foolishly naive, I hold on to a deep belief in people. Even when their blind spots get the best of them, to keep doing this work, I have to believe that once people recognize the effects of the institutions and policies, that they will work to change them. Believing in people helps with the next point. Building institutional capacity means meeting people where they are. As an ally, I know this is my role, onboarding and educating others. And the more people we onboard, the better off we are. And 5, remember that the process of looking inward into the way our policies, programs, and departments may be hurting our most vulnerable populations is difficult. Again, it comes back to believing in people. If you believe the people in your community care, then this is going to be a painful process of looking inward as we do this work together. So be kind to the people, but hard on the issues.
Thank you, both of you. First, just very quickly before my 3 minutes begins, thank you, Maurice, for the introduction. Thank you so much to Gina Greco and the Faculty Senate for the invitation to be here today. I'm just one of those Portland State alumni that just cannot stay away from this place. Really, really pleased to be here today. So the theme of this year's symposium is, what does it mean to be educated in the 21st century? I think that there are so many different ways to approach this, an answer to this question, but through this lens of equity and inclusion that we've been asked to look at it through today, it takes a type of process, thought, and dialogue that will inevitably be uncomfortable for very many people. It is only by sitting with this discomfort, however, that individuals in higher education can grow into agents of change. And I want to be clear, I'm not referring to the discomfort that I, as a woman, feel living in an oppressively patriarchal system, or to the discomfort I feel when I'm constantly assumed to be heterosexual. And I'm not referring to the discomfort that my friends and colleagues of color encounter when they have to navigate a dominant social narrative that is built on the despicable ideals of white supremacy. These discomforts are with many of us every day of our lives, and I actually hesitate to even call them discomforts because I think they're more accurately described as pain. The discomfort I am referring to is the one that I, as a white cisgender person, feel when I think about the unearned benefits available to me because of my whiteness and because I was born with a physical disposition that matches my gender identity according to medicinal standards. Sitting with that discomfort, that's imperative, as is accepting the reality that this discomfort doesn't go away. So what does this have to do with the theme of today? What does it mean to be educated in the 21st century? Well, I think that institutions of higher education have a responsibility to nurture an understanding that while this discomfort might be a challenge, it is even more than a challenge, it's an opportunity. My position as a white ally is not a service. It is a responsibility. I owe it to the world to be, the world I live in, to be a white ally. I'm sure it's difficult, for example, to be a male feminist, and shout out to the male feminists, I love you all dearly. But combating the culture of objectification of women is men's responsibility, more so, or just as much, if not more so, than it is we women's and folks of all genders. So what I'm getting at here is that our classrooms, our gathering spaces, our offices, our campuses must strive to be spaces wherein students not only learn how to interrupt microaggressions and feel safe articulating how systemic marginalization affects their lives, but they also must be places where these uncomfortable feelings and the pains of oppression are sat with, examined, and discussed out loud. It is often said that social change takes shape in higher education, and we need to look to history for proof of that. That's as far as we need to look. Today's colleges and universities are in a unique position to continue the work of dismantling systemic oppression, and the work is being done. I see it being done here at Portland State. I see it being done at my employer, Portland Community College, but because we're talking about hundreds, thousands, countless years of these white patriarchal systems being intact, the work needs to remain constant and needs to be carried out with daily intentionality. So to close, to be educated in the 21st century means that when you leave an institution of higher education with a degree, you're also leaving with a sense of the way your own various identities and values interact with the deeply embedded institutions of privilege and oppression. And you're also leaving that institution having inherited a determination to contribute to the deconstruction of systemic oppression.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for being here. The long weekend that we set aside to commemorate the legacy of the great American prophetic voice of the 20th century came at the right time. It got me to thinking about the question of the ethical evaluation of institutions in the business conducted in institutions. And I thought that's the best contribution I can make to this discussion. Very, very brief ethical reflection on the question of what it is to be educated at the university of the 21st century. I think it is to be in a setting that has a dearth of ethical discourse in guiding what we do. And I wanted to share some notions bearing on the question of equity and inclusion. The mission and the work of the university in a democracy is, or ought to be, grounded and guided by at least two ethical commitments. One is denoted by the term university, and the second one is denoted by the term democracy. And these two ethical commitments are, first, to reveal the shared universal core of the human condition, which requires paradoxically cultivating an appreciation for and conducting the careful study of the wondrous mystery of the diversity in the human condition. The second value, or the second ethical commitment, is to provide citizens of the democracy universal access to university learning. And each of these ethical commitments, well, both of them are constitutive of the work of the university in a democracy. And each one of them, if you notice, in turn points to or kind of works out the substance of two terms referenced in the title of this panel, and these are equity and diversity. Now, these are two terms, equity and diversity, which easily become threadbare, even hollow buzz terms. So it is important to, at least I find for myself, but I think in our environment, to remind ourselves daily that each one of those two terms is a placeholder or a hook for an ethical argument that we need to work out and live out. Just one final observation about values and ethical commitments. The difficulty, or one great difficulty in ethical conduct, both individual or institutional conduct, I feel, is that it requires balancing several ethical principles at once. It's much easier to be consistently pursuing one ethical principle. So the university is constituted or grounded in these two forms of universality I introduced earlier, but these two are not the only ethical commitments and values guiding us. If we single-mindedly observe one or two ethical commitments and forget about others that are equally important, we put ourselves in the proverbial situation of paving the road to hell with good intentions. And I want to at least highlight a third ethical commitment that needs to be equally balanced against the first two. As we focused on universality of access and universality of intellectual pursuit, inclusion and equity to guide university policy and practice, we must at the same time respect a foundational value of our institution, and that is the value of academic freedom. And that speaks to the methods by which we pursue the goals and live the values of equity and inclusion. The method, academic freedom, requires that we have intellectual diversity of pursuit of solutions to have more equity and inclusion. It means, and it's academic freedom for faculty, for staff, for students. We need to have a diversity in the search for, intellectual search for solutions. They cannot be bureaucratic, they cannot be mandated, because all of those are always gonna be solutions proposed with good intentions, but the method is flawed. It kills part of what is at the heart of a strong university. Those are my thoughts for today. Thank you.
And thank you to all the panelists. This is amazing. And thank you for the invitation to participate. I too am going to be reading so that I can stay within the 3 minutes. I reviewed the prompts provided by the Planning Committee, which include achieving an equity-minded curriculum, ensuring all students experience quality in their educational experiences and outcomes, address inequalities in outcomes amongst various demographics of students, provide support and resources to faculty to achieve these goals, and of course to students so all have the opportunity to achieve their potential, and provide development opportunities of cultural and intercultural competence skill sets to faculty, staff, and students. In light of these 3 minutes, my framing is that we must vigorously commit to structural and systemic changes. We must think in concrete action terms. What can we do to achieve these kinds of goals? And these goals are mirrored in the strategic plan. For me, the answer is what we do best in education, that is utilizing our scholarship, our teaching, and our co-curricular efforts and offerings. Within the curriculum, the courses our faculty offer and within which our students engage in learning and critical thinking, what kind of multicultural learning objectives does each course include? What is the minimum requirements of intercultural and diversity education we consider necessary to graduate from PSU? What first-year experiences for both first years and transfer students are we willing to require? What global as well as US-based courses on these topics are we willing to require for all students in all majors? What arc of service learning, community-based learning, undergraduate research, practicums, internships, fieldwork, and domestic and study abroad are we willing to develop and require that aren't limited to specific majors, as well as not limited to traditional locations of assignments for service, community-based learning, undergrad research, etc.? Our structures for such curriculum and external engagement need to be comprehensive and cohesive, not disparate and disconnected. Will we, as faculty and staff, be willing to agree to attend an arc of seminars, workshops, dialogues, study groups, etc., to help us gain the skills we need to develop our course content, learn to manage tough conversations within and outside of the classroom, learn to keep a finger on our own pulse relative to implicit unconscious bias, language, calling out microaggressions, and focusing on teachable moments? Are we willing to develop and submit to performance evaluations that include our progress on these dimensions? Those in any kind of management, leadership, unit head, supervisory role, are we willing to continuously seek development opportunities for how to lead and manage a socially just, inclusive, and equity-minded unit and institution and be measured? Do we know what it means to seek out existing best practices on high-impact learning and retention, experiences for all our students, and the differentials for students across the demographics of gender, ethnicity, race, religion, country of origin, sexual orientation, gender identity and expression, disability, ability, veteran status, parental status, etc., etc.? Will we actively seek out the research on these subjects and the skills, require the skills, and measure the skills to effectively deploy the best practices in curriculum, in pedagogy, in co-curriculum, in recruitment and retention, in policy development, in management and leadership? Thank you.
Let's thank all of our panelists. All right, wonderful. Well, again, we have about 30 minutes for table discussions, and similar as before, you have the flip charts available for you. You have additional prompt questions and table hosts as resources for you. And I'll come back at 1:55 and announce a break at that time.